Hey, folks. Looks like we're live. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon on a Wednesday. I know this is a little bit of an unusual day for an Esoterica live stream, but I have a reason. I have a reason why it's a Wednesday and not a Friday. I'll say more about that in a minute. But well, I guess I can say it now. It doesn't really matter. The reason why we're doing this Wednesday, why a live stream instead of a normal Friday one, the way I normally like to do them, is because I'm not going to be in town on Friday. I'm actually heading. I'm heading actually out of town, out of Detroit. Is that Russell? Hey, Russell. It's one of my oldest friends. I think I see down there in the chat. My goodness, known that man for a minute. I see Zevi down there. Oh yeah, it's not Friday, so Zevi can dial in. And so it's not Shabbos over there in the Holy Land. So yeah, welcome, folks. But yeah, so I'm going to be going out of town on tomorrow. I'm leaving town. I'm going to New York City, the city, and I'll be because I'm going to be attending the International Antiquarian Book Fair, which is, of course, the nerdiest thing that one can do when you literally travel to go to an antiquarian book fair. Um, that is a thing that I'm doing, and the best way to describe it, it's like going into a museum of books where you can buy stuff. It's as if the museum of books, all the books, had a gift shop, and you could buy books in the gift shop. I'll cut and paste in the chat one of the catalogs of one of the booksellers that I'm looking forward to visiting. Not that I can really afford much of what they have. Let me see if I can find their catalog. Where'd it go? You can flip through it if you like. Well, oh, I've already downloaded it. Never mind. I'll have to find it somewhere else. But yes, this is a really serious New York. The International New York Book Fair is absolutely one of the most. It's the biggest book fair in the world, and even with joking with Denis over at Foolish Fish about how much I would love for he and I both to be able to go. That'd be such a just such a gas for us to both be able to visit. And there's some really incredible books that are going to be for sale that are way outside my price range. You're talking about incredibly rare books and autographs. Some of the stuff is, I mean, this is like all the way back to medieval manuscripts and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to being there. I'm going to go. I got the early bird ticket, so I'm going to getting in sometime tomorrow morning in New York City, and they'll be heading over to the Lower East Side to go see the to the book fair. Been saving some money, so hopefully I can pick up a few things, and hopefully also get some stuff for Esoteric Ex Libris. If I find some really good bargains, I can maybe put those on the website for sale. Um, but I'm really looking forward to getting to New York City. I haven't been there in quite a while. Going to go to the Met and hang out. So if for whatever reason you see me walking the streets of New York City, or you happen to be attending the International Book Fair over there in New York, just feel free to walk over and say hey. And I might be doing an Esoterica get together. It's kind of like hard to plan that kind of thing, but maybe that will be a thing I do, but we'll see. So yeah, so that's the reason why we're doing this on Wednesday and not our normal Friday, because I'm going out of town. I'm not going to be available to do not going to be able to do a live stream on Friday. But in other news, it's been a fun few weeks on the channel. I hope folks have liked the content for the past few weeks. It seems like it's done pretty well in terms of views and folks commenting and folks engaging. We've had um, a lot of really great content on Maimonides. We did a really great team up content with Philip and Zevi on Maimonides, who I just love. Maimonides. Um, he's just so great. I really love him and really agree with him. In fact, I would say he doesn't go far enough. I'm more even on Team Gersonides if you really want to put me in a team. But I really love Maimonides. I really find him to be just a very kindred spirit in terms of his Judaism and his philosophical program. We did this fun thing on Paracelsus and this funny magic business. These the sigil magic that you can find in Paracelsus, or pseudo Paracelsus, really. Um, and the Trident whole thing that stuff is funny. I wonder if anyone reached out to the Etsy seller that sells the Tridents, how it's all about reconciling stuff and magic and metaphysics when Paracelsus really himself just says it's actually about uh, erectile dysfunction. So, um, so yeah, it's funny that's the kind of thing that's actually that's in that Paracelsus text, and it was fun doing that episode. We did this great episode on the Rephaim. I got to hang out with Denis from Foolish Fish, which was a lot of fun. It's really great, just bonding with Denis over weird books that we both love, and it's also great seeing how different we are. That we because Denis approaches the material from a practitioner point of view, and I approach it from an academic point of view. It's interesting. At least it was interesting in my experience about where we overlapped and where we didn't, and just really learning all kinds of really cool stuff from him in terms of the practitioner side of things. And yeah, I hope that he also enjoyed chatting with me. I think he did, and I really appreciated hanging out with him. He's just a super great guy, and it was a lot of fun hanging out with Denis. So that was a really fun episode. Also got him up to at least it helped to get him up to 100,000 subscribers, which he absolutely deserves. So that was absolutely a lot of fun hanging out with the Denis. And most fun I've had in a while. The most fun I've had in a while is this completely ridiculous episode that I did for April Fools. I don't know how many folks that got the chance to watch it, but man, that was a lot of fun to work with a good friend of mine, James Boley, and a teacher of mine, and translate apple bottom jeans into Hebrew, and then make it into a Kabbalistic um, thing about the Shekhinah and the Klipot. And I don't know, it was really fun. In fact, behind the scenes, I won't go too much into the details, but it managed to make its way up to some pretty serious people, uh, like really serious people, like serious Zohar scholars were looking at it and be like, "This is not really a real part of the Zohar." And I'm like, "No, it's not a real part of the Zohar. It's apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur." The whole club was looking at her, and she got low, 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 low. You guys have no idea how hard it was to film a 14-minute long joke, a 14-minute long joke. Um, and I was wondering kind of when people would get it, and I thought that people would clearly get the idea that it was uh, not really real when I say that when I had to say the that it was found in a synagogue called the Anshe Korach synagogue. That anybody, I think anyone who knows about the Bible, the Torah, is going to know that there is no synagogue in the world ever going to be called Anshe Korach. Of course, Korach, as some of you I'm sure know, was the guy that rebelled against Moses and was swallowed up by the earth, he and his entire band. I mean, that's the joke, right? The band of Korach, and that's why I call it Anshe Korach. Um, no synagogue is ever going to be called Anshe Korach. Um, so yeah, I thought that would tip people off that clearly this was a joke. There's no synagogue ever going to be called Anshe Korach. But yeah, even through the apple bottom jeans part, some people were still tricked. And what I was relying on, and I think Zevi pointed this out from Seekers of Unity. A lot more people got it than I thought would. But my gambit was that the Venn diagram of people who would know about apple bottom jeans and the Venn diagram of people that would be really interested in the Zohar, that Venn diagram would have very little overlap. And that there would be not many people in the middle of people who would recognize apple bottom jeans and recognize something from the Zohar. Um, and so people who recognize neither one of those things got tricked, but I think a lot of people didn't, which of course you guys are all super smart. And a lot of people were like, no, this is crazily apple bottom jeans. This is not really um, the Zohar. But we can always hold out hope that maybe a real section of the Zohar on Esther will be found. And again, a lot of the stuff I said in that episode is not false, just FYI. Cordovero does actually argue that one should study Esther on Zohar. It's not clear at all why he says that, because there is no Zohar on Esther, so we're not quite sure what is going on there. But Cordovero seems to believe that existed. It seems like he may have studied it, so maybe it did exist and it was never published, or it existed only in manuscript, or it's been lost. Who knows? Um, but Who knows? But at any rate, no new fragment of Esther ever found. It was just apple bottom jeans. Um, I hope folks liked it. I thought it was hilarious. So, um, all right. Let me see here. Oh, all right. So, I have a little bit of time today. Actually, my family has gone to the Philadelphia area for Pesach, so they're out there. So I've had the house to myself for a week, which has been fantastic because I desperately need isolation. Isolation. I don't know how other people feel, but I have a deep need in my mental health just to be really radically alone for periods of time. It's like the hermit in me. And I've had this really rejuvenating period where I've had some alone time, which is extraordinarily helpful in terms of mental health. Although I miss my family terribly, um, my little kids and stuff like that. I just see them on duo on the phone, and it doesn't do the trick. So it's such a weird tension of I desperately need to be alone, but also miss my family and miss my partner so much. So I'm looking forward to seeing them this weekend. But oh, Zevi, that's hilarious that you had to explain to someone that it was a joke. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to bear the brunt of that. I do appreciate also you playing along and giving even deeper insights into the mystical meaning of apple bottom jeans. Although I think Zevi, I think you know on you being on team Chassidut, you know that's you could find the truth. You could find kabbalistic wisdom in anything, even with apple bottom jeans. So who you know, I'm making fun of it, but I might be completely wrong that we should that hiding behind all things is the divine, even in apple bottom jeans. So I shouldn't be so dismissive. Um, but yeah. So anyway, my family's sort of um, been there, and I'm gonna go see them. I'm gonna go down to Philadelphia after I finish up with New York on Sunday and come back here. But yeah, it's been a productive week. I've gotten a lot of reading done. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I've been reading because I've there's going to be upcoming episodes and yeah, I have a couple things, alignments and Kabbalah, and some a really great book about Kabbalah I've been reading that I want to recommend to people. So I'll do that here in just a little bit, and as usual, we'll also be doing a little bit of esoterica Q&A here in a minute. I'll start that. I'll start looking at the Q&A and also do a little esoterica show and tell as we are wont to do, and you know, probably be on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, ever how long it takes to really get to some questions and chat with you guys and hang out because this is in many ways this is really the my favorite part of the whole channel is doing these live streams and just hanging out with you guys because one of the things that Zevi and Philip from Let's Talk Religion and I were chatting about the other day is there's something about sitting in front of a camera that is absolutely disconcerting. I can totally be in a lecture hall with hundreds of people and just have no ability like to just I can just lecture without notes, without anything. I can just lecture, and it's super easy. And as soon as you put me in a room with a camera, it's just like I'm tripping up over everything, and it's just awful. So it's funny that doing these live streams is actually so much of a joy. It's so just fun to hang out with you guys and take questions and chat with y'all because I can just be a little less wooden and play a little less close to the facts or what have you. And it's just a lot of it's very pleasant in that regard. So I really appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me and hanging out. Yeah, hey Andrew. Um, I think someone just asked about Discord. Andrew is the guy to chat about. I think that I just saw as I was signing on a message from Andrew about Discord. So that's something I can talk about in a minute as well. But I was going to say something else too. Now I can't remember what it is. Oh, the other things that I've really enjoyed recently about the channel is I've really enjoyed hanging out with Derek and folks over at Gnostic Informant and at Myth Vision. I've had a couple really great conversations with both those guys, and it's just really great to. Part of what's really great about YouTube is you just get connected with so many smart, kind, thoughtful people, and you just begin to build a community of people having really interesting conversations. And I'm really excited. I have to say, I'm really excited about the prospects of this sort of emerging academic Western esotericism, mysticism, mythicism, religious studies, this whole sort of milieu that's forming around a lot of this stuff. And it's really, really exciting to be part of hanging out with folks like Denis from Foolish Fish, or Angela from Angela Symposium, or the guys over at Myth Vision and Gnostic Informant, who are just so kind and just ask such great questions, and also just want to really learn and have fun, which is really the best thing, because just learning is not that fun. And also just having some fun on live streams and taking some questions and trying to give back to the community. What I, at least I can speak for myself, I've been incredibly blessed to have an education where I've gotten to study religious studies, philosophy, a wide range of things. And it's just really a blessing to be able to give back to the community, either in person or online. So it's just a blessing for me to do that, and also just to have fun doing it. It's just a great opportunity. So, speak of the devil, Derek. Thank you, brother, for the super chat. It was great hanging out with you yesterday. Looking forward to joining Derek over at Myth Vision at 6 o'clock today. Actually, as soon as I'm lying off here, I'm going to hang out with Derek as Gutsick Gibbon, Erica, is going to it's going to take on Robert Ciphers' critique of the out of Africa theory. I have a feeling that I know where I'm putting my money on that debate. In that debate, I'm putting my money squarely on Gutsick Gibbon. Erica has all of my money in that debate. So I'm looking forward to watching that. She's just so brilliant. I really appreciate her content. It's one of those things where I don't know anything about, the development of evolution and stuff. I know kind of what I've learned in college about it, but it's really great seeing someone with her kind of expertise really just laying out like, oh, this is what we know about genetics and evolution, the out of Africa theory. She's just really, really brilliant. So I really appreciate her, and also just really appreciate Derek for hosting conversations like that. What a macher. What a macher. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Derek. All right, folks. I've been rambling on for 17 minutes. Let me start getting some questions, because I see some really great questions coming through. And let me jump up to the top and try to grab a couple. I'm going to try to answer them a little faster than normal so I can get to more questions. Sometimes I give really long answers. So I'm going to try to answer them a little quicker than normal. If that's a complete lie, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to totally ramble on like I normally do, but I'm going to say that I'm going to do that because I'm going to try to set it as a regulative ideal. Let's get Kantian for a second. I'm going to set myself a regulative ideal, and I'm going to be the kind of person that briefly answers questions, and knowing that I'm not going to really do that. All right. So Old Contemptible, it's a great name, asks, would discussing the railroader belief in jinxed or possessed locomotives be outside the scope of the channel? It is an interesting idea. That is an interesting idea. I've not covered anything about ghosts really at all. I think that expertise in Western esotericism and expertise in the paranormal, or what we call parapsychology, those are different things actually. That one could be versed in parapsychology, and I've done some stuff in parapsychology and sort of like paranormal studies, things like ghosts and things like that. I don't have a lot of expertise in that. I've never studied ghosts outside from reading some books about ghosts, and I don't have any expertise in it. And I think that like things like jinx locomotives and ghost trains, which always reminds me of like Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 7, whatever the correct one is. Folks remember that, where you like go on the ghost train in Final Fantasy 3 for Super Nintendo, Super Famicom? I think that also falls in the domain of folklore studies, which I also don't have any expertise in. Although I'd like to do something on ghosts. As folks know, always in December, I do some kind of ghost story, whether it's ancient Egyptian ghosts or some kind of ancient ghost story. And there's a great book out now by Irvin Finkel about some of the first ghosts in ancient Babylon and Sumeria. But I just don't have the expertise, so I wouldn't be able to cover it with any kind of rigor. But I would be interested in the cultural history of ghosts and how that intersects with spiritualism. And spiritualism is a thing I am interested in, and I don't have a lot of expertise in it. But I have some great books like Radical Spirits and stuff like that about the history of spiritualism, especially in 19th century North America and the UK. This is the domain of things that I don't know a lot about, and I'd like to learn more about them because it is terribly interesting. Um, so yeah, I don't do a lot about ghosts just um, because it's an interesting subdomain, mostly paranormal studies and folklore studies, and not so much Western esotericism, which is weird, right? Because you would think that there would be a lot of stuff about ghosts, considering how much I like futz around with demons or whatever. That you would think that there would be like demons and angels and ghosts and goblins and various kinds of Paracelsian elemental spirits or what have you, but not so much ghosts. In fact, I would argue that ghosts don't really become such a big thing until the 19th century. It's really sort of the Victorian craze around ghosts that really propels them into that really brings the modern ghost story and really brings ghosts into the popular imagination in a strong way. Not that they didn't exist prior to that, obviously they did, but really the ghost story as we know it, really, or the ghost narratives as we know them, from the Amityville Horror or whatever, all the way to various kinds of James Wan movies. That really is a Victorian thing largely. So that'd be interesting as a piece of cultural history. Ghost locomotives and jinx locomotives, in addition. All right, millennial Buddhism. Looking to study the thoughts of New Testament allegory. Any book recommendations, including this school of thought? I guess it depends on how you want to study it. I'm not an expert in New Testament allegory. What book I would recommend taking a look at if you really wanted to see where it began is largely in the works of Origen. Origen is one of my favorite early Christian commentators on the Bible. In fact, he has one of the earliest commentaries on the Bible. And Origen's commentary is one of the earliest to really work through the idea that there are several different layers. He thinks there are three different layers, and that one of them, the middle layer, is an allegorical layer, and that allegorical layer contains various kinds of quasi occult is not the right word, but quasi hidden ideas. So Origin is a great place to start with that, both in terms of the richness of Origin's thought, but also that he's one of the earliest writers to really talk about the about biblical hermeneutics as a thing. And so there's that. Now, the other place to go if you want to really dive into the Hebrew Bible is, of course, Philo. Philo's commentaries on the Hebrew Bible, really the Septuagint, are deeply all about philosophical allegory, and they are very boring to read, but they're very richly encoded about how Philo thinks that, especially the book of Genesis, contains very deep philosophical ideas that are encoded in the book of Genesis. And basically, what he thinks is hiding in there is kind of a version of what he already believed, a version of Middle Platonism. And so, Philo is a great place for very early Hebrew Bible hermeneutic allegorical readings. And of course, Origen, I think, takes over in many ways from Philo and applies the same kind of hermeneutic to the New Testament. And so in that way, Origen's texts are really, really great. I like Origen. I think he's a super smart guy. There's a new translation of On First Principles that's out that I've been meaning to get to. It's like a beach book for me. Like that's what I have a problem, folks. Like I have a problem. I like because Origen's On First Principles is a beach book for me. So I've been waiting for an excuse to go read Origins on the new translation of Origins on First Principles. So, um, which is a super interesting work. Poor Origin got thrown under the bus. Under the bus. Am I looking for any particular books at the book fair, Brent Jacobs? Yes, I am. I'm looking for. There's a certain price point that of books that I like to collect, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But there's a price point somewhere between about $300 and $1,000. That's my budget. And there's a ton of books that can be had in that price range that are really cool. You can get copies of Agrippa. You can get copies of Iamblichus, of Plotinus, of Plato. You can get. There's just so much of these books that survive from especially the 17th and 18th centuries that are not terribly expensive and are core components of Western esotericism. I'll show an example of one here in just a little bit, and you can get them for $300, $400, $500. Now I know that's a lot of money for a book, not compared to Brill. Brill's $50 trillion. You have to sell your kidneys to get a Brill book these days. But one of the things I will say about books, rare books, is that they do keep their value and they do appreciate in value. And so you can look at them both as a purchase, but also as an investment. And as long as you can sell them later or you can give them to your kids. In many ways, it's very akin to buying art. Now, of course, the problem with buying art is you have to eventually get it to an auction house or something, and the auction house is going to take whatever cut they take. But they do hold value very well, and they appreciate very well. In fact, they appreciate sometimes better than precious metals, and certainly better than mutual funds. And so you kind of get to have your cake and eat it too, in the terms of you get to have a really cool old book that's at least close to my heart, and they appreciate in value. And when you leave them to your kids, which I intend to do with mine, they can, we can use it to pay for their college, or buy them a car, or whatever. So in that way, rare book collecting is a relatively good investment, I would say. And again, you can see some of my rare books there, that I have just a few lying around. I don't have a huge collection or anything like that. So um, let's see here. Let me. What are some original Hermetic texts that you can read? You can read all of the original Hermetic texts. They're all translated. You can read the traditional Corpus Hermeticum. You can read the Armenian definitions. You can read all the fragments that are preserved in M. David Litwa's Hermetica 2. You can read all of them. What you probably can't read is a lot of the technical Hermetica, a lot of the Latin Hermetica, which Dana Trail, who the modern Hermeticist, one of the people who really inspired me early on in this project, who I really, really appreciate his work. He's also working on some of the technical Hermetica stuff. So the theoretical Hermetica is all published and easily accessible. It's the technical Hermetica that actually is more difficult, and the Latin Hermetica, which fine scholars like Dana Trell and Pareca and folks like that, Leona Safe is also working on it. That stuff is coming together. So you can read all of it. All right, Robert Benson, appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you. Um, do you know of any work similar to Abulafia's ecstatic Kabbalah, but instead of Hebrew and names of God, it's mathematics, logic, geometry, etc.? Nothing immediately comes to mind that is specifically mathematically or geometrically or logically driven. Um, I'm fairly confident that stuff did exist. I'm pretty sure that's what Pythagoreanism was. I think there's some neo-Pythagorean stuff that's out there that did contain that kind of stuff. The theology of arithmetic kind of contains some stuff like that, but there's nothing operative that I know of. I don't know of any operative forms of mysticism that are exclusively mathematical or logical or geometric in character. Um, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that mathematics and logic and mysticism have gone their separate ways in the past several hundred years. And it's very rare that I've seen an occultist or a mystic who also does high level logic. And it's very rare I see a high level logician who's interested in mysticism and magic. I just think those things have gone their separate ways, which is weird and ironic considering that they were very tightly combined for many, many centuries, millennia, even, and all the way through Agrippa and beyond. Of course, folks like John Dee were um, very, very intensely interested in mathematics and logic. So I don't know of any text that's like that. Maybe kind of the Monas Hieroglyphica, because it is so highly geometric and mathematical, but even that's not totally operative. It's not a practitioner's text. At least not any, like, not like Abulafia's, where you're getting like, here's how to repeat this mantra, and here's how to develop this, here's how to develop these permutations of the names of God to to go in these altered states of consciousness. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Although I will say that I've done enough informal logic in my lifetime to get into altered states of consciousness. There's something very great about. I love logic and doing logic, and when you really get into the upper reaches of it, it does have a kind of mystical bent to it. And I think I've said this before, but I'm sympathetic to the view of Parmenides that the way of speaking and that the way of knowing are one. The way of speaking and the way of being are one. That is to say that logic and being, that logos and ontos are the same thing. I'm sympathetic to that view, and insofar as that's true, that logic is a preternatural structure of reality, which I'm willing to believe that it is, and I have reason to think that it is. That doing logic and understanding logic is a Gnostic business. That one is not understanding just inference. that one is in fact understanding something far deeper than just mere inference, that one in fact is understanding basic structures of reality, and that logic is the actual structure of reality. I'm highly sympathetic to that view, actually. Really highly sympathetic to that view. And again, even scientific discoveries and things like that. The fact that we can do science at all, that we can model nature mathematically and it seems to work and to have predictive power, that would be very weird if there weren't some deep connection between the very structure of ontology and logic. And some people have gone that direction. Badiou famously has gone that direction with his set theory ontology. I don't think I buy that, but some version of that I think is plausible. Some version of logical realism I think is plausible. But I won't venture too much further into that because I would have to have a lot more I would have to have a lot more stuff to back that up, which I think I could do. Whatever. Um Have I played any of the modules from Tales of the Yawning Portal? I have. I've DM'd a couple actually. I built them into a big campaign that I did. Tales of the Yawning Portal is a great little module for D&D. Actually, I just bought there's a new comic book store in our neighborhood, just right across the way. And like, I don't know about y'all, but I haven't been in a comic book store in ages. I don't even know when, decades ago. And I don't know if my friend Russell's still here. Russell and I go back to like middle school. We like met in like seventh grade. One of my just dearest people in my life, love him to death. But Russell, I don't know if you're still there, but I remember going into L&M card shop and just the smell of like the vinyl comic book covers. Like it was just like a smell that like stuck with me. And like comic cards, like the old X-Men comic cards and stuff. I used to love that stuff. But anyway, I wanted an excuse to go into the comic book shop, and sure enough, right, the smell of the comic book shop like hit me right in the feels. And and I picked up a copy of Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which of course folks will know that's the fifth edition version of Undermountain, the famed Undermountain, the most, one of the most grueling, longest. I mean, you go from like, I think level 1 to level 20, all in a dungeon crawl. And so I used to really love Undermountain way back in AD&D and even earlier. And so I picked up the new version basically of Undermountain, which I'm looking forward to looking through it. I don't know if I'll run it because who wants to do a 20 level dungeon crawl? But it's cool. So, all right. Um, Busy Business asks, "What's your favorite portrayal of magic in media that you felt that caught the idea of it well?" I guess I'll say two things that two depictions of magic in media that I really appreciated. The first is The Craft. The first one. I think The Craft did an excellent job of capturing something like not magic Wicca circa 1990s, kind of Wicca-ish 1990s Wicca. I really love The Craft. The Craft was a very like big movie in my mind when I was growing up. I love that movie. Saw it in the theaters. I have the soundtrack on vinyl. I love that movie. So The Craft, I think, is a pretty good representation of that. But I think also A Dark Song is a relatively good depiction of math. It's not a good depiction of the Abramelin ritual, which it's supposed to depict, but it's still, I think, a decent depiction of something like a artistically interesting mock-up of ceremonial magic as it might be practiced in the 20th century, 21st century. So I appreciate The Craft and Dark Song in that way. One thing that I think is terrible is that I have never seen a good depiction of an alchemist in any media. Alchemy is always misrepresented. I would love to help work on a movie in which alchemy is more accurately depicted, where there's a lead character who's an alchemist or a side character as an alchemist, and we get to see alchemy being done the way that it really was done, and really depict alchemy in a justified, clear way. I would really like to work on a film like that. Maybe I can hang out with Atun Shea or something and make a movie with him. But yeah, I really would very much like to see that. So I'm all about that kind of stuff. So that'd be my short answer. Uh, Although of course magic and witchcraft have come a very different paths since the craft and things like that. So um, all right, let me know. Let me see. Favorite metal albums this year. Silent Mandible. I haven't listened to much metal this year. I mean, it's funny because I'm like wearing a Wolves in the Throne Room shirt, and I listened to that album when it came out. I really liked it, but I haven't really listened to much metal this year. Um, no idea, no idea. I haven't listened to much. Gabriel from Anathema Press has sent me a really great email with a bunch of new black metal that I haven't listened to yet. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. So need to get into that. But I haven't listened to much metal this year. I've been listening to a lot more uh, uh, sort of like dark wave, more like 1980s dark synth stuff, like Kayla and Mikla, which is a great all women band out of Iceland, which I really appreciate. So I've been listening to a lot more stuff like that, sort of dark ambient or more 80s style synth stuff. In fact, the last like 10 Esoterica episodes have been written to me listening to the Stranger Things soundtrack. So I really like the Stranger Things soundtrack, and I really like Disaster Piece. Really like their soundtrack for It Follows and stuff like that. So I've been listening to a lot more like synthy stuff. So not so much metal. Am I planning to make an episode on Sadiq Nachman Uman? Maybe. I think that'd be a really great thing to team up with Zevi. I really trust his expertise on the Hasidish front. So yeah, maybe Nachman or the Besht and stuff like that. So maybe something on those guys. Maybe there's something on those guys later on. Does a Torah in the Bible have hidden occult knowledge? Uh, Probably not. I don't think it does. I now that what I'm saying there is I don't think the people that wrote the stuff in the Bible hid anything in it, aside from acrostics and stuff like that. But that's not to say that there's not things for people to find. I think people that reading is never the text is never just read. The text is always interpolated. I know that sounds pomo or whatever, but it's true that one never reads a text. One is always reading into a text. And so I think that insofar as one is finding things in the text that the intentional author did not mean to put there, I think those things are there. They are viable to the reader. And so in that way, I think that it doesn't really matter that the authors of the text didn't encode stuff in it. What matters is that it is readable in such a way that those kinds of connections can be made. And I think that makes it liable to esoteric interpretation. And I think those interpretations are just as valid as any other. When I read, rabbinical commentaries in the Bible or Christian commentaries in the Bible, they find all kinds of things in there that I think aren't really there, but that's still a unique act of the work of interpolating ideas into the text is itself an act of genius. And I think that they are there insofar as they are interpolated into it, but I don't think that the writers of the Bible were really hiding things in the text. Um, um, Beard care video, that's hilarious. Rian Rodriguez. Like whatever random conditioner my wife buys, I'm not. That's like literally that's it. Just like I just wash my hair, and if she buys some random conditioner, I just put it in my beard and hope for the best. I don't have any sort of like elaborate beard care situation. Maybe I should. Sometimes when I like do something fancy, I'll put some like nice smelling beard oil in, but aside from that, I don't do much with it. Just don't do much with it. Um, all right, let me scroll down a little bit more. Um, all right. Great. Some great questions. All right, let me see. Robert Herring, have I read? All right, there's some great super chats coming in. I'm going to get to those super chats. Do not worry. I will definitely get to them. In fact, I'll get to them in just a minute. Wow, let's see here. Have I read Esoterica by Albert Pike? No. It's sort of this weird obsession with Albert Pike among some anti-Freemason people. I don't really have a dog in that fight. I don't know. So no, I've not read it. I know that people think all kinds of that Albert Pike allegedly predicted all kinds of weird stuff, or the Freemasons caused World War II or whatever. I don't believe any of that. I think it's nonsense. Um, so yeah, not convinced of that. Sorry, Robert. I don't. Yeah, I've never read it. I've not read it. Um, does a 1611 KGV have hidden ciphers and occult secrets inspired by Francis Bacon? No, I don't think so. I think that's apophenia, folks. I think that the same with the William Shakespeare stuff. I think that if you look hard enough over a large enough body of literature, you will find anything you want in there. Whether it's Nostradamus or Bill Shakespeare or the Bible, you will find all kinds of patterns that are just noise. Um, uh, in order for there to be a really hardcore pattern, you would have to really isolate why there is a pattern there. And I think in a large enough corpus, there's enough a noise to signal noise ratio that in that gray area you can start to find things that look like patterns that really aren't. Um, so no, I don't think there's anything hidden in the KGV. I don't think there's anything hidden in Bill Shakespeare. I don't. I think Shakespeare. I don't think there's some elaborate plot. I'm a Stratfordian. Um, I've I've never the arguments about Shakespeare not being Shakespeare. They look like to me a lot like looking at clouds long enough and you start to see stuff. I've never found any of those arguments convincing. And every expert that I know who's a person who knows about Shakespeare way more than me is it's a non-starter. Like, yeah, that's Shakespeare. So I'm not impressed. I'm that stuff does not it does not make a strong impression upon me. Um, I know that you're supposed to believe. I don't know. I'm not impressed by that. Since it's 420, yeah, it is 420. I hope all the folks that are out there celebrating are celebrating responsibly. As folks know, I'm very enthusiastic about the use of mind altering substances in a way that is responsible. So I hope if you are celebrating, that you do celebrate in a responsible way. What are your thoughts on cannabism and the evidence of cannabis use in ancient Hebrew rituals? This is a perennial question I get. The short answer is no one knows what cannabism is. And just because the word cannabism sounds kind of like the word cannabis doesn't mean anything. Because cannabis and cannabism, because they sound rough, kind of similar, they're false friends, right? So, so I don't think there's any connection there. The short answer is two things. One, we don't know. We just don't know what that word means. It's like one of the million words in the Hebrew Bible. We don't know what it means. And the rabbis can't agree. Some think it's calamus, or there's a whole range of things that it might have been. Secondly, in the Talmud, we learn that the family that made the incense that was burned in the temple, only that family knew the recipe. And when the temple was destroyed and that family went the way of the dodo, that's it. It's gone. The whole recipe is missing. The whole recipe is gone. And I think there's even a part in the Talmud where it says that that's one of the things that Elijah is going to have to fix when Elijah comes back before the days of the Messiah. Is Elijah's going to have to fix and tell us what the correct recipe is for um, the temple incense, and he's going to correct all the priesthood stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Now that's all mythology or whatever. But the short answer is we don't know what kind of bosom is. Now, let me qualify that. Because at Tel Arad, which was a Yahweh shrine destroyed by Josiah, probably, at Tel Arad, there have been cannabinoids found on the altar at Tel Arad, and that was a Yahweh altar. So, is that evidence that cannabosem or something like a cannabinoid was burned on that altar? Yeah, it's really good evidence that some kind of cannabinoid was burned on that altar at Tel Arad. Now, is the Tel Arad Yahweh cult the same as the Jerusalem Yahweh cult? Good question. We don't know because there is no evidence of what happened at the Jerusalem temple because it's been destroyed repeatedly. So, um, in a preliminary way, am I willing to believe that cannabinoids were used in Israelite religious practice? Yeah, I'm willing to believe that because we have concrete evidence from Tel Arad at a Yahweh shrine of evidence of it um, there on the shrine. Of course, that altar, by the way, is now in the Israel Museum, which is funny because no one thought to test it until recently. It's just been sitting in the Israel Museum. Um, so I'm perfectly willing to believe it's possible. Perfectly willing to believe it's possible. But linguistically, we have no conclusive evidence, and we just are not going to get evidence from the Jerusalem temple because it's just not there. No remains of it survive. And so, with that, what we have to say is there evidence of cannabinoid use in Israelite rituals from Tel Arad? There is. There is. There's good scientific evidence. Can we extrapolate that to wider Israelite practice? No. Does the linguistic evidence from the Bible and from the Talmud conclusively tell us what it is? No. So that's what we have. Little physical evidence from Arad, a lot of ambiguity in the text, a lot of ambiguity in Hebrew. So when you have ambiguity, you just say we don't know. This is the evidence. This is what we have, but I'm not committed one way or the other to what it might have been. But yeah, I'm not committed one way or the other to what it might have been. All right. Can you explain why you wear the hat and traditional Jewish clothes when you don't necessarily believe in God? No, I don't even believe in God at all. I don't really believe in any God. I like the fact that atheism gets picked on as if somehow the atheists are especially bad because they don't believe in at least one God, but most people are almost atheists. If you're a monotheist, you're just one God away from being an atheist. You just don't believe in any of the other gods. You just happen to believe in just one. So you're like a stone's throw away from atheism, which I'm a non-theist. I think that Judaism is a lot more than a religion. And I think that Judaism isn't so much oriented around what you believe. I think that's a Christianity centric vision of what a religion is. And Christianity doesn't get to draw the measuring rod for what religions are. And Judaism is just not a religion for which belief is a core component. Now, of course, it's a thing. And mostly about God, I'm just a skeptic about God. God could exist. And in fact, I'm willing to believe that I'm wrong about that. I just don't have any compelling evidence that God exists, at least not the Israelite God or any God aside from maybe Spinoza's God. But so I think that it's about a culture. And again, folks may know this. I'm a Reconstructionist. I follow the teachings of Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan of blessed memory. And for him, he was a non-supernaturalist and he accepted Judaism as a civilization. And so insofar as I am a member of that civilization, I feel like it's important to maintain my what he called folk ways. And maintaining those folk ways, like wearing a kippah, having a beard maybe, or whatever, those are important to me for reasons that go well beyond the narrow scope of religious dogma. I don't give a damn about religious dogma, but I give a big damn about my religious culture. And so because of my religious culture, I really deeply want to honor that tradition. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm not going to make decisions based about my tiny little insignificant beliefs in the scope of a 3,000-year-old tradition. I'm just one Yahoo. Who cares what I believe? Even me, I don't even care what I believe. And so, so that's part of the reason why. Let's see. Rugpug asks me, "How are you, Dr. Sledge?" I'm doing great, thank you. How are you? Fine. I'm hanging out with always fine people. Like 253 people in the chat. How could I not be having a great afternoon? It's wonderful. Would you ever start a mostly unironic esoteric order? I would only start an ironic esoteric order. That was the only way I would start an esoteric order, if it were completely ironic. And the reason why is I don't have any esoteric knowledge. I mean, I don't have any I could only start an esoteric order or join an esoteric order if I really thought there were esoteric knowledge that I wanted to have and don't, and some order had it, which I have never been impressed by that. Or if I had some esoteric knowledge that I felt needed to be reserved only for an elite group of people. And I'm pedagogically against that, just like straight out of the gate against that. The entire project of Esoterica, ironically enough, is to make esotericism, make Esoterica available. And so I wouldn't want to start an order if it were all about initiating people in so they can get the secrets that I have, because I don't have any secrets. In fact, my entire job is making the esoteric accessible. So no, I think if I were starting esoteric order, it would be completely ironic. It would be an Umberto Eco novel somehow. So I think that would be but that would be it. No. They don't have any esoteric secrets. Yeah, Curtis Bickler. Yeah, Suplex the Ghost Train. Yeah, that's such a great game. I want to play that game again. Will I provide some evidence concerning African esotericism? I have a little bit, right? Egypt is part of Africa. I've spent a lot of time on Egyptian esotericism. Gnosticism is an African movement. Latin Christianity is an African movement. when I think of Origen, or I think of Clement, or the Alexandrian Gnostics, her Corpus Hermeticum, Hermeticism is African. I don't. It boggles my mind why Europeans somehow just like can't compute that somehow. Racism. But yeah, they've covered African mysticism in the terms of the Corpus Hermeticum, Gnosticism, and things like that, Egyptian texts. Now, if you're asking about sort of West African or Sub-Saharan African, the answer is not really, because I don't know much about it, and that's just a place where I don't know a ton about that stuff, and so if I don't know a lot about it, I can't really cover it. I do know that Philip has covered. Philip has some background in from Let's Talk Religion and African Sufism, so I think he might be able to cover some of that stuff. But yeah, I just don't have the expertise to cover it. And maybe I could bring in folks. Again, maybe as more people begin to produce content on YouTube, I can begin to have conversations with folks who focus on that kind of stuff. And I would like to do that, but you can't be an expert in everything, and I'm lucky to know the range of things that I do. But I will say that it's very important for me when I teach about Hermeticism, Gnosticism, early Christianity, that these are all African movements. These are, and that's not like kind of like people think, oh, you're being woke or whatever. Screw that. Not being woke. It's history. To name things as what they are isn't political. It's just history. And when I think through those things, yes, these are African things. But as far as like West Africa, Ethiopia, Sub-Saharan Africa, I just don't know enough about them to do it responsibly. All right, let me get some super chats because I know there's been a bunch come through, and I want to make sure I get those. Are they not? Okay, great. Let me get these super chats, and I'll scroll back up. Fight Forever, thank you. Have you seen any examples of an English version of Gamatra used for occultism or outside of it? It seems like it'd be grafted on the alphabet. Oh yeah, people use English Gematria all the time. You just count to 26 letters and do it that way. I've always found so-called English Gematria ham-fisted, just because we have a system of counting that isn't our alphabet, and the Latin alphabet was never really used for counting, like the way the Greek and the Hebrew alphabet were. So I've always found English Gematria kind of ham-fisted, but who cares what I believe? I'm not so much big on that, but one could. People do it all the time. People do it all the time. Although I think again, it's sort of unnatural, just because um, Hebrew and Greek, that is their numbering system, or it was, but not for Latin. The Latins had Roman numeral system, and it's totally different. But thank you for your donation. Um, would I ever do a video on the 18th century Touch Me Not Grimoire? I don't know that I've heard of this grimoire. Interesting. I don't know that I've heard of it. I don't tend to get so close to the 18th century. I tend to stop a lot of my content sometime around the 17th century. So maybe just that it's outside my wheelhouse, just because I don't know. I don't know that material from the 17th century as much. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about it. But it'd be interesting to learn about it. Of course, in the 17th century, there's a bunch of text manuscripts still being produced that are pretty interesting. But no, Peter, I'm sorry, I don't know much about that. I don't know much about that manuscript. All right, let me scroll up and get some other. Wow, there's a bunch of super chats. All right, let me get these super chats. Asa looks like perhaps a Finnish name. Historically, how often were inquisitions, etc., actually accurately researching the practices that were suppressing, and how much in grimoires, etc., was fiction specifically by the authors? I can't speak for all inquisitioners, because I'm sure there was a range of inquisitioners, but I will say that I'll just pick out one inquisitioner. For instance, Martin Del Rio. Martin Del Rio really knew his stuff. In fact, I would say that Martin Del Rio is probably the most knowledgeable person in the 17th and 16th centuries about magic, just in general. His book on magic, his Inquisitional Manual of Magic, is probably the most encyclopedic volume about magic ever written in Europe, at least in that time. And so he knows everybody. He just has a encyclopedic knowledge of magic. So on the one hand, I think some inquisitors were very well versed. Bernard Guy, Nicholas Emmerich. It's even pretty clear that Sprenger and Kramer from the Malleus Maleficarum have some experience, although I think their experience is mostly with folk magic from their trial experience that they've had. But I think the Inquisitors did know a good bit about this stuff. I think they knew a lot about it. Um, Now, how much in Grimoires was fiction? I don't think it was fiction. I do think that these grimoires were very rare, very difficult to get access to, and I do think that if we what we know about the general contours of the worldviews of the Middle Ages, there's every reason to believe they would have believed that they could summon and bind spirits and demons and such angels. So no, I don't think that they thought them as fictions. Now, I do think people produced frauds to make money. I think the Voynich manuscript was an example of a medieval fraud produced to make money. But I don't think the grimoires were forgeries to make money. I think that they were being produced because people really did believe that they contained secrets to bind these creatures, and certainly Inquisitioners believed it, and Inquisitioners knew a bunch about it, and we can see that in their writings. All right, Karen, do I scribe in Hebrew? No, I don't know anything about Sophros. I do mostly Latin Hebrew, mostly Latin calligraphy, and I can do some Hebrew, but I've never gotten proficiency in Sophrut, like Hebrew scribal arts. So no, I don't have a lot of experience in Hebrew scribal arts. Although I really do appreciate it and wish I knew more, but I don't know much. Historically, this is another question by Asa. Historically, how often were inquisitions, etc., actually? Oh, it's the same question. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, I think the Inquisitioners knew a lot more than we would think. Actually, I don't think they were just sort of brutal torturers. They were that too, but they weren't only that. They weren't only that. Um, you mentioned that you'd someday do a video on quote what it would mean to say that magic works in an epistemic sense. $5 toward funding that video. Okay. Yeah, I mean, my short answer is that I think that when I say that magic works, what I'm really talking about is that the way that we frame reality and the way we frame causation is in a big way going to determine how we see causation happen. And so this is a Kantian point, kind of that uh, that causation is not ipso facto apparent. In fact, it may not even be metaphysically real in a strong sense. If we could have a healthy dose of skepticism, a la Hume. But I think that if one accepts a sufficiently broad vision of causation, then magic kind of pops into existence. And so I think that what has to happen is that there's an epistemological relationship to how we think about causation. And I think that there's a very narrow vision of causation, for instance, that of Kant, who says, look, it's basically a regulative ideal. And I tend to agree with Kant about that. Or you can have a much more metaphysically promiscuous vision of causation. And I think that if you have a sufficiently metaphysically promiscuous vision of causation, then magic pops into existence. Magic pops into existence epistemically. Now, I don't think it pops into existence causally. That's right. Those are different things, actually. So I think it all depends on what kind of metaphysics that one commits oneself to. If you commit yourself to a Kantian metaphysics, of which I do in a certain kind of way, then I don't think magic's going to get in the door. But if you have a sufficiently promiscuous metaphysics or a sufficiently non Akamite, a sufficiently non Akamite ontology, that is to say, you allow in more than the mere necessity of entities, then absolutely you're getting magic off the ground. It would be relatively easy to get magic off the ground. I just happen to be an Akamite and a Kantian in that regard. So so your mileage may vary. It may very certainly vary. All right. R. Regarding a dark song, why does Hollywood always portray magic ritual as a cautionary tale where things always go bad for the mage? It's interesting. I think it's just the false narrative, right? It's the Christian bias against magic. It's what it is. I think it's just the idea that there's a long-standing idea that magic, if it's wielded, will always undo the practitioner. And this idea goes all the way back to Augustine. If you read Augustine's analysis of magic all the way back in De Civita Dei and the City of God, What Augustine argues is that the magician thinks that that they're manipulating demons, but the reality, of course, is that demons are manipulating the magician. And so what Augustine believes is that it's always a shield game. That the magician, the magus, thinks they're in control, but really these other forces are in control. And at the end of the day, it always goes badly for the magus. That's the Augustine trope. You fast forward that 1,000 years, and you get to Faust, and that narrative, the Faust narrative, both in the German and the English context, is just a recurring notion. You see it in The Craft, right? That's exactly what happens to what's her name in The Craft, right? She gets too powerful and she goes nuts. So this narrative is just a very powerful narrative, and it's sort of a, like you said, a cautionary tale about about power and about how power can corrupt you because its source may be impure or dangerous. Now, what's interesting about A Dark Song is that it did go, and this is spoilers, right? It does go bad for one character, but it goes very well for another. So in that way, because of her reason of the transformation of her wanting to wield that magic, because it transforms from vengeance to forgiveness and something, then she's given a sort of a breakthrough and things like that. So I think that it's also about how we wield power. And insofar as that's the cautionary tale about power and power's origins and the ability of power to corrupt, I think that's still a good cautionary tale. I think many people could benefit from that cautionary tale. But absolutely, I'm going. It goes all the way back to Augustine. Yeah, it goes all the way back to Augustine, and in some ways even to Apuleius and things like that. But I think really Augustine. All right, let me see if there's any other. Um, any other any other super chats? I don't see any other ones, so I'm gonna scroll back up. And for folks who want to make sure you get your question answered, feel free to drop them in the super chat, and I will definitely get to them. Um, Let me scroll back up and just try to get some other questions that I see up here. All right. Wow, there's so many great questions. Let me just see. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Thank you so much. Thank you, brother. I hope, Vogadis, I really, 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 really appreciate that. Is a huge donation to the channel. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the support that you've given to Esoterica. Um, yeah, that's just really humbling. I really, really deeply appreciate that. I hope I sent you a piece of calligraphy as a piece of humble appreciation for how much you've supported the channel. So yeah, folks, give him a hand. No, I really, really appreciate that. So, and I hope the little piece of calligraphy I sent you, that I hope it's an expression of my deep gratitude for that kind of support. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Wow, just like that kind of folks, you guys are just amazing. This community, the folks around Esoterica, just absolutely love you guys. Absolutely love you guys. All right. You mentioned that you like Final Fantasy 3 and D&D, so I wanted to ask if you played any of Dark Soul games or Elden Ring. I haven't. I haven't played any modern video games ever. I really want to be the kind of person that plays more video games, just because I think video games are good for you. I think the kind of leisure and engaged leisure that video games provide for people is actually a psychological good. I'm just completely overwhelmed in my time. I get up at 6 in the morning, and as soon as I'm up at 6 in the morning, if I'm not earlier before 6, I'm just working. And so between raising 2 toddlers, working on the channel, doing other stuff, I just have 0 time. And by the time the 8 o'clock rolls around and I put my kids to bed, I'm just like want to lay in bed and do nothing. So the big thing is just having time to do it. But no, I'd like to be a person who plays more video games, because I do think video games are actually very beneficial for people psychologically. But I just don't have the time for it. It just comes down to that, it's an opportunity cost. If I invest hours and hours and hours in a video game, that's an opportunity cost that I'm losing on something else. And my wife got me a Switch a couple years ago as a birthday present, and I really like the new Ninja Gaiden style game and some of the some of the Castle Troid, the sort of Castlevania Metroid style games, sort of the retro vintage games. Um, I like those, and they're great because they're not like super involved. But yeah, I just need to just need to find some more time to do that kind of stuff. But no, um, for all you folks that don't have kids, kinderfry folks, what I call you guys, you guys that are kinderfry, um, good for y'all. I love my kids, but man, kids are a time sink, y'all. Kids are a time sink. They're as bad as Twitter, I hear. So, but you love them, but man, take some time. It takes some time. All right, let me scroll up and grab some more questions. All right. Oh, sorry, I missed you heading out, Zevi. It's good to see you, man. Hey, folks, if folks are not signed, subscribe to Zevi's channel, Seekers of Unity, go sign up. Go to YouTube, look up Seekers of Unity. Zevi is putting out some of the least appreciated content on mysticism, Jewish mysticism, doing just really great things on mysticism. Zevi is a great guy. He's a great scholar, and just doing amazing work. And so I really, his channel is criminally underrated. And folks should absolutely go and sign up for Zevi's channel, Seekers of Unity. I really, really appreciate him just as a person, as a scholar, just a real menschy dude. So yeah, absolutely, folks need to go and sign up for Seekers of Unity. Just makes fantastic content. I really, really appreciate you, Zevi. All right, let me scroll back up and try to grab some other things. So there's a Luke and Lazy. Some state that Leviticus is clearly homophobic. That is to say, it precludes homosexuality. However, I've seen alternative exegesis that claim it's about pedestry. What do I think? I think Leviticus does not like homosexuality. Um, yeah, I think we can't lie about a text. I think that there's a desire to like rescue a text by making it more liberal, more amenable. Um, I'm just straight up willing to abandon a text. When I read Leviticus, it also says that you shouldn't let witches live and stuff like that, or mechashefa. I just am not committed to rescuing a text. Sometimes the text has regressive values, and should I don't expect the text from the Iron Age to have progressive values that I have. I expect it to be homophobic, um, and I'm also not committed to abiding that. I'm not committed to abiding it. So yeah, it's there. There's all kinds of gross things in the Bible. There's gross things in the Quran. There's gross things in the Talmud. There's gross things in Buddhist literature. I'm just not. I just have zero desire to commit myself to chain myself to a text. I'm willing to give my tradition a vote, as we say in Reconstructionism, but not a veto. The text is going to get a vote. I'm going to read the Torah. I'm going to try to understand it. I'm going to give it a vote in terms of how I view it and how it impacts my life. But I'm also going to look at it and go, hell no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to like have slavery. The Bible's completely okay with slavery, and it's awful. It's awful slavery. And there are all kinds of like crazy slavery apologists out there defending it. No, it's awful slavery. It's chattel slavery. I'm like, I'm not going to get with that. So, yeah, the Bible supports slavery. Am I going to support slavery? Hell no. I'll throw that stuff under the bus faster than you can blink your eye. I don't care how holy and magical of a book it is. Owning other human beings is morally reprehensible, and hating someone because of who they love is morally reprehensible. I'm not getting with it. So, yeah, it's in there, and I have no desire to chain myself to it. Um, and I don't have any desire to interpret it away. I don't have any desire to interpret it away because it's not like the Bible has to talk about pedestry in sort of a uh, abstract way. We know that this is a world in which women are getting married to men with no consent at a very young age, at a morally outrageous age. So again, I don't think that the text has to. The text just assumes that grown men are going to marry girls. That doesn't have to like. It's not trying to pass a prohibition about that. That's just the world that the Bible existed in. It's a world that places still now exist in. So no, I don't think that the Bible has to be. I don't think I have any desire to interpret the Bible to make it more copacetic to my worldview. It's just when the Bible isn't copacetic to my worldview, I'm absolutely willing to dispense with it. It can go the way of the dodo for all I care. So I'm not going to get in the business of being a homophobe apologist. Ugh. Um, let me scroll up. Let me see some other stuff. Is there a copy of Pardes Rumim in circulation online? Yeah, there's definitely a copy in Hebrew. There's a copy in Hebrew. I don't know of any in English. I don't know of any good translations at all in English. Yeah, you can find it easily in Hebrew online. It's I bet I'm sure on Hebrew books you can find it. It'll be a crappy OCR scan of some badly printed edition from 100 years ago, but I'm sure it's on there. You just have to learn to read Cordovero's extremely difficult Hebrew. Um, so, but yeah, it's definitely out there. Where does the concept of good guy Lucifer come from? I think it comes from the Romantic period, where Lucifer becomes kind of an anti-hero. Even begins as early as John Milton, but it's sort of you get this desire to rescue that Lucifer and Satan become a romantic image of rebellion and disconformity and stuff like that, and it sticks all the way up to the Church of Satan and things like that. It's kind of an old trope by now. I mean, I don't know. Is Satan being a Satanist edgy anymore? I don't know. It's a thing that people were doing back in France to be edgy in the 1700s. I can't imagine 300 years later it's not edgy anymore. But that's where it began. It really begins in the Romantic movement, sort of recapturing Lucifer as a kind of representation of rebellion and stuff like that. What is my opinion of the Ars Notoria? I do not think you're going to learn anything looking at images in the Ars Notoria other than the images inside the Ars Notoria. It's neat. I really do appreciate that Skinner and folks have made it more accessible. I wish the images in those books were a little bit higher resolution, unfortunately, but I'm not at all convinced that you're going to stare at a bunch of images in the Ars Notoria and learn grammar. I think if you want to learn grammar and rhetoric, you got to learn grammar and rhetoric the old-fashioned way, which is A-R-U-M, long A. Yeah, I think you have to just go through if you want to learn that, the genitive plural of a genitive singular of a Greek word, and it's omicron upsilon. I think you're just going to have to learn that on your own. I don't think staring at a bunch of images on a piece of paper or parchment are going to help you with that. Yeah, grammar sucks, but I don't think you're going to stare at a bunch of stuff and learn it. I do want to make an episode on the Ars Notoria, though. It is super fascinating. With the overwhelming archaeological evidence pointing to the existence of a giant race, there is no archaeological evidence at all of a giant race of people. You've just been reading complete garbage archaeology. There's no archaeological evidence of that. They've excavated hundreds of Philistine graves, and guess what? The Philistines, they're all the same height as everyone else. There's no archaeological evidence of giants. The Rephaim are mythological. Half that stuff is mythological. Yeah, there are no Rephaim. It's bad archaeology. It's made up stuff. All right, let me scroll down. I think there was some super chats down here. All right. Yeah, Truth Seeker. Hey, brother. Yeah. Yeah, I had a really great conversation with Truth Seeker. He's really a super smart guy, just really interested in sort of the esoteric dimensions of Christianity. Yeah, I really appreciated our conversation too, man. I'm looking forward to that coming out. Absolutely, absolutely. That was a great conversation. Love to talk to you again. That was really great. Destiny. I recently found out that I have some Ashkenazi Jewish heritage or lineage. Should shift the lens through which I study Jewish mysticism. Maybe. I mean, I don't like. Let me how to say this in a way that's diplomatic. I don't like linking ethnicity to mysticism. I think that insofar as there are really wonderful, powerful things about mysticism, I don't think any ethnic group has any monopoly on that. I think that oppressed ethnic groups and oppressed peoples in general should be consulted and respected before imperializing their practices, and But when I see, when I see someone who's Nordic or Germanic or English and they want to really dive into their Germanic and Nordic, you know, cultural heritage and really adopt the forms of paganism that are really meaningful for them, I'm about it. I just feel like that when that becomes sort of like crypto white supremacy or whatever, or Jewish supremacy, which also exists out there, I'm just like, I'm not with that at all. I just like, that is gross, and I don't want to have any part of that. But doesn't I mean, people want to embrace runes or embrace things that are connected to their ethnic background. Fantastic. And I think that if, as for instance, me, like I'm not Nordic. I'm that's not my world. But I think that if I wanted to embrace some aspect of their religious worldview, I'd want to be in community with those people. I don't think I just want to do it willy nilly. Now, I don't have an interest in that per se, but I feel like being in community and having respectful relationships with the communities of people that you're enriched by in terms of your mystical or esoteric practices is very important. But yeah, I sometimes find that people get grossed out by or get alarmed by people embracing their Norse or British heritage, their Anglo-Saxon heritage, and I'm like, as long as it's not just crypto white supremacy, and you really do find Odin or Thor or Freya, or these gods are, you find that mystically and religiously powerful. More power to you. I'm all about it. I'm all about it. But if you found out that you have some Ashkenazi Jewish heritage, then you may want to investigate that. Go talk to a local rabbi, and see what that means for you. And because no one can tell you what that means for you other than you, and being in a relationship with a community of Ashkenazi Jews or other Jews, I feel like that's the thing to do is to be in community with people and to have respectful, open lines of engagement with those communities, whether they're minority or majority communities. But I think we should be especially respectful of minority communities just because they've historically had such a been stomped on. So so there's that. All right. Um, let me jump up and see. Wow, there's like um why this is for a question from Eric Smith. Why are you not interested in occultism from the 16th century onward? Less original content, perhaps? No, it has nothing to do with what's interesting and what's not. It just happens to be what I have expertise in. And I would say that all the way through the 17th and 18th centuries, I have some expertise. It begins to drop off rapidly in the 18th century, but I'm still doing my homework, folks. I'm still, for instance, I've been reading the Richard Kaczynski biography of Aleister Crowley. It's my nighttime bedtime reading, and I'm just really, it's not that I think less of Thelema or think less of Crowley or think less of Blavatsky or what have you. It's just that I just don't know about them so much because I my expertise. And I think I mentioned this in another live stream. Is that I think I was mentioning this with Denis. Many people learn about esotericism because they begin to practice esotericism. Well, I'm not an esotericist, right? I'm not an occultist. And because most people come in contact with esotericism because they become a Thelemite or a Wiccan or some other kind of hermeticist, they're functioning primarily in the aftermath of the 20th century or the 19th century. And because they enter in there, they're really much more aware of what's going on in the world of 20th century, 21st century occultism. I'm not an occultist and I never have been an occultist. So I've never entered in the world of practice. Now there are practitioners that I really want to learn more from. I think of Marco Visconti and Aaron Leach and Dot Darling and Denis Poisson. Those are folks I do admire, and I do think they have a really amazing religious practice that I really want to learn a lot more about. But because I'm not an occultist, I didn't come into Thelema or the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I'm an academic, and so I really was interested primarily, first and foremost, in the 16th century and late classical world. And so I'm working my way up in terms of understanding this stuff. So it has nothing to do with me having a judgment or a prejudice against esotericism in the around the 19th and 20th centuries. It just has to do with I don't know a lot about them, just because of how I entered into studying esotericism. But I'm still doing my homework in terms of really getting a handle on Aleister Crowley and other forms of esotericism that have developed in the 20th and 21st centuries. So has zero to do with Zero to do with a prejudice on my part. I think Crowley and Blavatsky and those guys were geniuses. They were kind of they had messed up aspects of their life, but who doesn't? Who care? I mean, I'm not gonna cancel Crowley. That's stupid. Frank Monday, do you think the ancient Hebrews' portrayal of creation is commiserate with a flat Earth plane model? Yeah, the Hebrews certainly believed in a flat Earth. There's no doubt about that. They literally believed that the world was a disc supported by pillars with a dome on top of it, full of water. So sure. Now it just so happens that both the ancient Hebrews and the flat Earth people are wrong. But yeah, the ancient Hebrews, yeah, definitely believed in a disc Earth supported by pillars. I think no doubt about that. Um, Dom Gagny, how does one start studying Kabbalah? Um, well, I have a whole episode about that. If you want to study Kabbalah like a Kabbalist, one of the greatest Kabbalists of all time, at least in my opinion, Cordovero, you can look at my episode on how to study Kabbalah like a Kabbalist, um, which is, I think, a fun episode. So it appears that people find the term metaphysically promiscuous to be funny. Have folks not heard this term before? Is this like a philosophy term that has never gotten out of the ivory tower? Um, Maybe I should say more about what metaphysically promiscuous means. It is a good term. Metaphysical or ontological promiscuity is when you violate Occam's razor. Um, Basically, Occam's razor is not the idea the simplest answer is the most correct. That's not Occam's razor. Um, in fact, it's not only not Occam's razor, it's not true. I mean, if you've ever studied particle physics, no part of particle physics is simple. It's incredibly complicated. So, Occam never said the simplest answer is the most correct. What Occam said was that when you try to explain something, you should introduce only the minimal amount of entities necessary to explain that thing. Or another way of putting it is, don't multiply entities beyond necessity. That's more close to what he said. So that's Occam's razor. When you violate Occam's razor and you introduce more entities, we typically refer to a metaphysics that introduces more than the necessary amount of entities. We call that metaphysics a promiscuous metaphysics, which is to say it's having on more babies like entities. Um, and so yeah, when if a critique of a system would be that it is ontologically promiscuous, which is just to say it introduces more beings than necessary to explain a phenomena in it. Um, um, in metaphysics run the gamut. I mean, I am a very hardcore alchemist. I'm very strongly an alchemist, and so I introduce very little entities in my metaphysics. My metaphysics is very bare bones, but you may have a more promiscuous metaphysics. It sounds fun to have a promiscuous metaphysics. Just like promiscuity in general is fun. Promiscuous metaphysics is also fun. So go forth, be promiscuous in your metaphysics. I'm not going to be. I have a very celibate metaphysics. Um, Very celibate metaphysics. What's my opinion that the Kabbalah was originally Greek? Um, I don't think the Kabbalah was originally Greek. There's no evidence of that. I will say this. I do think that the Sefer Yetzirah is downstream of Neo-Pythagoreanism. So insofar as the Sefer Yetzirah is a core component of the Kabbalah, and it definitely is, the Sefer Yetzirah is absolutely downstream of Neo-Pythagoreanism. Now, we can't draw the exact ... to connect Neo-Pythagoreanism to Sefer Yetzirah just because there's a gap of a couple hundred years where things go to Syriac and stuff like that, and the history just muddles the whole thing. But I absolutely do believe that Sefer Yetzirah is downstream of Neo-Pythagoreanism, and insofar as I believe that, that I do think that that aspect of Kabbalah is very connected to Greek philosophy. So, but Sefer Bahir and other stuff, yeah, they bring in elements from Neoplatonism and stuff like that. But I would say that the Zohar, the core text of Kabbalah, is very un-Greek, aside from the sort of the inheritance of Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism. All right, what time is it? Let me check the time. Ooh, 5:25. Wow, this may go a little longer than I thought. I thought folks might appreciate this. Be careful. So, some folks have asked in my opening of the Esoterica video what this thing is. People have asked me what this is. Now you have a guess of what this is. It's absinthe. Um, and I'm not going to say where it came from, but it's absinthe. But this thing is what is called an autoverser, and I'm pronouncing that in bad French. It's called an autoverser, a self-server. It's like a tiny little absinthe fountain for serving yourself a glass of absinthe. So you've probably seen it in my episodes, in some of my episodes. So santé. It's 5 o'clock. It's 5:30. So close enough to the green hour. Let's have a glass of absinthe. Now it's ASMR. ASMR absinthe esoterica time. All right, folks, I'm going to let this autoverser brûlé serve me a glass of absinthe as I sit here. You can hear it ticking away. It's like a metronome. It's very relaxing. Um, but people have asked what it is. It's a little thing for serving absinthe. And you can see the absinthe beginning to loosh, to cloud up as the water drips into the absinthe. So I'm going to have a glass of absinthe while I hang out with you guys for the last half hour or so. Oh, show and tell time. Should not forget show and tell time. So I want to do 2 show and tell things. One, this is the coolest book on Kabbalah that I have read in a long time. Right? This book, Secrets of the Face, this is the bee's knees of Kabbalah stuff, folks. This is written by Malila Hellner Eshed. She is a rock star scholar of the Kabbalah. This book is specifically about the sections of the Zohar called the Idrot. And the Idrot are, pour some more water in the thing. The Idrot are the most notoriously difficult sections of the Zohar. The Greater Assembly, the Lesser Assembly, the Sefer Tzniuta, and some other sections. This is a huge study, 400 pages. It's a study of those sections of the Zohar. And they have, to me at least, been some of the most difficult sections for me to understand. And Malila handles them deathly in this book. It's also amazing to see a woman, like, thank God women are now doing Kabbalah studies because it's been so doodly. But this is an amazing book. It's a little expensive, but if you're a fan of Kabbalah, if you really want to get into Kabbalah, this is a fantastic book. It is knocking my socks off. She just has such a command of the Aramaic, of the text. This is a great book. I'm going to be doing an episode on this book, so look for that soon. Look for that soon. How's this absinthe coming? Pretty cloudy. A little bit more water. My ASMR time. But some folks were asking me about what kinds of books I would be looking for when I go to the New York Book Fair. And this is an example of the kind of book that I will be looking for. It's itty bitty. If you want a sense of how books are in terms of size, like this is my Pixel 4, and this is the book. You can see books are a lot. We tend to think of old books as giant tomes like Harry Potter, but they're often not that big. They're often really little, like this. This is a cool book, folks. This is a copy. The major work in this book is Iamblichus's book De Mysteriis Egyptorum, on the Egyptian mysteries. But dig this. It also includes Proclus's book on the Alcibiades, and also his sections on ritual and demons. His famous sections on sacrifice and magic, quintessentially impactful in the history of Western esotericism. They're going to get their whole own episode. It includes Porphyry's book on De Divini and on his book on demons. It includes Michael Sellis's book on demons, which I've done a whole episode on. Michael Sellis on demons, and the Piece de Resistance. It includes Hermes Trismegistus and the Corpus Hermeticum, the Ficino translation, which is butchered or whatever, but it still contains, and it contains Ficino's commentary on it. This was printed in Lyon, in Lagundum, in MD 1538. So this is printed in 1538. And you can see, I don't know if it will show up very well with the focus, but you can see the cool Ouroboros in the table of contents there at the beginning. Let me flip to the Corpus Hermeticum part. It's really cool also because this is the backing of this is actually an old manuscript, which is really typical. But so let me flip to the beginning of the Pymander, the very beginning of the Corpus Hermeticum. There it is, folks. Mercurius, right? Mercurius, Hermes Trismegistus. This is the very beginning of the Corpus Hermeticum, like the Corpus Hermeticum. This little volume, it's neat. This is not in great shape. It has it does have the original pigskin binding, and you can see the little things where the clasps used to be. But these kind of volumes, you can get them sometimes relatively inexpensively. This is the kind of volume I'll be looking for. This is a handy dandy Hermetic primer, basically from the 16th century. So if you wanted to learn about Hermeticism, you would have picked up this book. This would be in the book you would have picked up. And this is the kind of book that lots of people would have picked up. And this will be the kind of book I'm looking for when I'm at the book fair. So these little volumes are not terribly expensive. Sometimes they're around sometimes $800-900, but for a book that's 400 years old and about Hermeticism, how cool, right? So this is the kind of book I'll be looking for. You could even see at the bottom here, it says Iamblichus. Someone wrote Iamblichus on the bottom. And I bet you can't see it on camera, but some of the support, the cartonnage actually is an old manuscript, which is kind of cool. But this is the kind of book I'll be looking for. And again, it's something neat about holding a book in your hand 400 years old or so. That's about Hermeticism. So, all right, I think my absinthe is ready. I'm gonna grab some of that. All right. It's all good and loosed. Santé. It makes the heart grow fonder. It makes the heart grow fonder. It's not bad if I don't say so myself. Still maybe working with a local distillery to make absinthe commercially. Maybe. It'd be cool to do that. I really want to do that. So I'm working with a local distillery in talks, a local distillery about making this absinthe commercially available. So cross your fingers for that if you're an absinthe fan. All right, folks, let me grab some more questions before I sign off and get some dinner. Do I have a new lighting set up? No, I have the same one that I have no idea how to use. I'm so bad at the tech side of this. I need some better lighting get-ups for these live streams. I'm always jealous of like all these people that have these really cool lighting with like cool background. I was talking to Truth Seeker earlier. He has these cool purple lights and stuff. I gotta like do that. I need more purple in my life. That's the answer. That's the name of the game. I need some more purple in my life. All right. Let me scroll through and grab some questions as I'm going down. 257 people in the chat. I'm really super happy that you guys are all around. Why did the Old Testament just stop? It didn't. It just the books that became the Old Testament, they just got frozen sometime in the 2nd century, but there were other books being written that, you know, and in fact, even some books that were in the Hebrew Bible didn't almost make it. Esther and Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, my favorite book ever. My favorite, not just of the Bible, my favorite book, Kohelet. It almost didn't make it in. So it's absolutely the case that that it could have not made it. So, and there are tons of other books, the entire history of pseudepigrapha that existed during the apocalyptic period. There are dozens and dozens of books. So, and in many ways, in terms of Judaism, the canon never ended. The Talmud is just as canon as the Bible. So the Zohar is just as canon as the Talmud. So absolutely, it's the case that at least in the Jewish world, the canon's still evolving and shaping. And the Chabad Lubavitch movement takes the Tanya very seriously. And I would go so far as to say the Tanya in the Chabad Lubavitch movement is a canonical text. It is authoritative in that regard. So, so this is, so This the canon's an evolving thing, at least in Judaism and in Christianity too. I mean, um, the Book of Mormon. It's a great example of how Christianity still has room for other canonical books. So, all right, Jacob, thank you for your super chat. In one of your live streams to learn history, you should pick up a language method of analysis. Whoops, sorry. Phone started ringing. Let me see here. Let me get your question. In one of your live streams to learn history, you should pick up a language method of analysis historiography. For the last two, a method of analysis historiography. You have to pick a theory of history. um, and I know that sounds weird, but um, how to say this? You have to pick a theory of history because either history is just random, or there are rules governing it, or it's going somewhere, or it's not. And I find that that if you don't have some mechanism of understanding history and studying history, whether it's like discursive analysis with Foucault, which I do not like at all. Sometimes people think that I'm like a Foucauldian, like I'm a postmodernist. Let me be very clear about this. I do not like Foucault, and I'm not a postmodernist. Um, Definitely not. Uh, Zero truck with that that school of philosophy. Um, but you have to pick some way of understanding history, right? You got to understand some way of doing history. I'm a historical materialist, right? That's the way I do history. I think that history is governed by the material forces of production, not in the intimate, tiny details as some kind of crappy old Marxist. But I do think fundamentally, if you can't eat, you're not writing books, right? And so that the material forces of history are bearing down on culture in a way that produce it. And so that's the way I read history. And if you don't like historical materialism because you think it's like crappy left wing Marxism, then you don't like my channel because every episode I make is made driven by historical materialism, right? That's how I view it. And so it's really funny because I have some people who are like, "Oh, I hate Marxism," or "I think that that left wing stuff is crap," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't like most left wing stuff too. I think a bunch of this like modern liberal stuff is garbage." But it's had this weird thing where people are like, "Oh, I really love your stuff, but I hate Marxism." I'm like, fine. If you like my stuff, you like the Marxist way of doing history because that's the way I do it, right? That's the way I do it. So you got to pick a theory of history. Now, I absolutely don't tell anyone what the theory of history to pick. I pick the one I think makes the most sense to me. But this is the way that you have to pick a theory of history, and you just have to pick one. And I think there are tons of ones to pick. You could pick a old school Hegelian one. You could pick lots of different ones. But I tend to be a historical materialist, and I tend to be a Marxist, an old school Marxist historical materialist, like 1920s Marxism. That's the way that I approach it. But I think bearing without a historiography of any kind, you spin your wheels. You have no sense of what caused what or why. You have no sense of how that works. And I think you have to get some grasp of that. Now, one of the things I don't do is tout my own theory of history as like what everyone else should believe. I don't think anyone should believe what I believe. But that is how I approach this topic as a historical materialist, as a historical materialist. Now, I think that most Marxists are crappy historical materialists. I will say that. In fact, I rarely ever see really good Marxist historical history, with one example that I think is absolutely amazing, and that's class struggle in the ancient world. That is an absolutely amazing piece of historical materialism. But most of it's bad. Like even Silvio Federici and stuff, I don't think it's very good. So that's how I work at it. But I think you have to pick one, and I don't care which one you pick. But if you don't have some theory of history, I think you spin your wheels. That's my opinion about that. Um, and you can also think Marxism is crap. That's fine. I don't give a damn. Believe whatever you want to believe. I think most Marxism is crap. But right, I'm a structural Marxist. I come from sort of a Althusserian school of Marxism. And I think that most visions of Marxist historical materialism are also garbage. I think they're very badly ham-fisted bad stuff. Yeah, I mean, postmodernism is such trash. um, Postmodernism is such trash. Um, but also, like old school liberal history, like Whiggish history, is idiotic. So I'm not getting with that either. But yeah, so that's my bit. But you got to pick one, and I would tell you pick the one that makes the most sense to you, and go with that. But this channel, I'm always very transparent about it. But I think that a lot of the weird sort of movement toward kind of hyper identity politics, or the tribalism that's developed in recent times, I think that's a branch of leftism that I don't want to have a lot to do with. Now, in terms of defending, historically oppressed peoples, of course, but I'm not at all going to get on board with what I think of as a rootless cosmopolitan theory of history that I think is actually grounded in anything. I'd rather deal with like calories and stone and rocks and printing. That's how I think about it. Oh, the book is Class Struggle in the Ancient World. It's, I think, one of the best books ever written. It's how I learned to do history, frankly. I mean, if you really want to if you really want to learn how I don't do history, go read that, and you'll see. Like, it's funny because people look at that book and they're like, holy crap, this is esoterica. This is how esoterica works. And I'm like, yeah, that's, if you want to understand a deep understanding of how I approach the history of Western esotericism, go read that book, because that's how I learned to do history. That's how I learned to do history. Um, but yeah, I find a lot of Marxism ham-fisted, and like that kind of, a lot of what goes on academic Marxism is just trash. Ugh. Ugh. Yeah, I have no desire to get involved with it. It's just a bunch of like weak academics who just want to use leftism as a way of like feeling pure and good. Like, I don't want to feel pure or good. I want to understand history. I'm not trying to be the good guy. It's not what I'm interested in. Um, um, yeah, what is the historical materialist explanation for a prohibition of homosexuality? I think it has to do with social control. I think it has to do with keeping people in their gender roles, and it's not unique to the Hebrew Bible. There are rules against homosexuality in Egypt. There are rules against homosexuality in almost every culture. Heteronormativity is how you keep the world going. I mean, the Bible and many legal codes are about structuring the world to maintain order. And if most people are heterosexual and there are outlying folks that are homosexual queer, those outliers are representative of chaos, and so you want to make them not happen. And so I think that you have to that there's a tendency among things, and this goes true for lots of cultures, to do that. And I think absolutely that's part of the reason what's motivating it is that they're trying to use it as antidotes against chaos. And turns out that gay people are not chaos. Surprise. Um, but if you're trying to control society, you might want to shove people who are not conforming to the gender roles or gender identities or sexual roles that are the majority in society. You may want to try to shove them into that box. So I think that's part of the reason why they do that. All right. Um, yeah, it's funny. Like, I think I've seen some people send me some stuff on Twitter of how like right wing people like hate esoterica because they're like, oh, the dude's a Marxist and a liberal. And I'm like, I'm not a liberal. Don't call me names. I'm a Marxist. I'm not a liberal. Don't call me that. Um, so I'm absolutely not, Lockean. Although I think Locke is actually way more radical than people think. His theory of property is super radical. I don't know why. I'm about Locke. I don't know why left wing people are like, oh, Locke is bad. He's a liberal. I'm like, Locke is a lot more radical than people give him credit for. Even Smith actually is a lot more radical than people give him credit for. Like, Smith really hated mercantilism and thought of it as exploitative. And he really thought of capitalism as a progressive system. And it was. And it absolutely was. Why people can't accept that blows my mind. Blows my mind. All right. Let me see some other questions here. Sunday. Uh, how do you say absinthe in Latin? I think it's just absinthium. I mean, I know that Artemisia absinthium is grand wormwood, so I think it's just absinthium. Have I ever had any experiences with God? When I've been on psychedelic drugs, I've had some experiences with God. And the deal that I always have with God is very simple. If I'm on psychedelic drugs and I meet God, My deal is always this: if you stick around after the psychedelic trip is over, then we can be buddies. But if you tip out after the LSD wears off, I'm gonna tip out too. So God always seems to tip out when the trip ends. So that's my relationship with God. But yeah, sure, I've had mystical experiences both on psychedelic drugs and in meditation. So I'm all about mysticism, but I'm also very skeptical of mystical experiences being used to underwrite metaphysics. I'm very skeptical of that. Um, yeah, you've had references to this is a super chat. Thank you, TGF816. You've had references to Poe and Lovecraft in your videos. Do you enjoy any other authors of weird and fantastic literature? Um, So yeah, I like the Yellow Sign. I like the Yellow King Chambers. That's a great collection of stories. So I like the Yellow King. I like Lord Dunnasy. I think I'm pronouncing that name wrong. So I like that stuff. Um, yeah, I like that world of early weird fiction. I like that world. I like Thomas Ligotti. I also like Thomas Ligotti as a philosopher. I really like. I'm also kind of a metaphysical pessimist, and I really like Thomas Ligotti's Conspiracy Against the Human Race. Yeah, I like a lot of the with sort of that weird fantastic literature. Um, I don't have enough time to read it, but I really do like it. I really do like it. Um, all right, let me keep scrolling up. Um, the Secrets of the Faith have images. No, it does not have any images. No, no. I think that I can imagine why, because I bet she has a good old fashioned Jewish allergy to imagery. So I bet it doesn't have any images, but you could easily make images if you wanted to help you. I kind of have to imagine them as I'm going through the parts theme. So Drew Wendell, thank you, man. Surely every alchemical experiment wasn't crazy, dangerous, or cancerous. Not everyone, but most of them. Is there a source replicating some of these in a safe and sane manner? Yes. Um, William Newman, has done a ton to replicate the alchemical experiments of Sir Isaac Newton, and you can replicate a lot of alchemy in a laboratory environment as long as you. I mean, a fume hood goes a long way, folks. Can we just have a minute to appreciate fume hoods? Okay, so fume hoods are a big part of it. So I think that one could easily do reproduce alchemical experiments, and um, William Newman's book on Newton describes with real clear analysis, chemical analysis, what he's doing. And you could, I think, if you had access to a university level lab and you knew your way around that lab, you could reproduce a great deal of alchemical experiments. Um, so sure, yeah, the net they reproduced the net, they reproduced various other kinds of alchemical procedures. One can do it. I think the main thing is just having a controlled environment in which to do it. So they're not all going to get you killed, but many of them would. But I think you can alleviate most of that just by having an alchemical lab that's alchemical lab, a chemistry lab that's suitably outfitted to do alchemy. Yeah, Charlie. Any knowledge or sources on the ancient Greek Goetia practices where the term Goetia comes from? Um, there's a great occultist, Jake Stratton Kent. I think that's his name. He's done a two-part book on Goetia. And I have it from good word. I haven't read it myself, but I have it from good word from people who I trust, like Denis Poisson from Fully Fish, that it's really good. I need to look at it. That would be a great place to start, just to take a look at that. There's lots of great books on Greek and Roman magic that deal with Greek and Roman sorcery. But yeah, um, the term Ars Goetia, it's very likely that the Solomonic magical tradition is imported from the Byzantine context, and so the word Goes means wizard or magic, will be a magic user, and it's probably just the case that those original texts are coming from the Byzantine milieu and crossing over into Italy in the 15th century, and just so the Greek term stuck. Um, Goetia, it's stuck. That's what I would say. But yeah, I want to look at the Jake Stratton Kent text. And there's lots of other good um, studies of Greek and Roman magic. All right, let me scroll up and get a couple of more. Yeah, absinthe ASMR. Have I seen the news of the Mount Ebor curse tablet? Yes. I'm very skeptical of that tablet, to be honest, folks. I think that Christopher Rolston, who is an excellent epigrapher and Hebrew paleographer, he's also expressed deep, deep reservations about it, and I trust him completely. I really, really appreciate Christopher Woolston. He's written the definitive account of the development of the Hebrew alphabet, early Hebrew alphabet, and he's not convinced at all, and I'm not either. So interesting. If they found something, that's great, but I trust it as far as I can throw it. So I trust it as far as I can throw it. All right. Scroll back up and get some more questions. Do not multiply entities beyond necessity. It's true. Um, don't do it. Don't do it. Um, what is crypto white supremacy? Crypto white supremacy is when you think that when you use your ancestral group, Germanic people, Anglo-Saxon people, but what you really just mean is white people. Um, and I think that I'm all about people embracing their Germanic roots, their Anglo-Saxon roots, their Irish roots, their Norse roots. That's fantastic. But I don't think there's such thing as white people. I just don't think white people exist. In fact, if you were to rewind time back to, I don't know, the ninth century, the Norse and the Anglo-Saxons were both white as me, and they hated each other, right? The English and the Irish hated each other. And so there's no such thing as white people. White people is an invention of like the 17th of the 18th century. And so it's that stuff that I worry about. But when someone says like, "Yeah, I'm all about being Norse," I'm like, "Hell yeah, that's cool. Be Norse, be Anglo-Saxon. If you're all about your Anglo-Saxon heritage, do it. That's fantastic. Um, go worship Woden. That's fantastic." But when it's just white people are better than everyone else, or Europeans are better than everyone else, I'm like, there's no such thing as Europeans. Like Poles and Portuguese people couldn't be more different in many ways. So I just think it's a nonsense idea. I think it's just a nonsense idea. Um, all right. Oh, yeah. I think Lisa, has, she says that she's a pagan and has Ashkenazi heritage as it happens. Sure. There's an entire new pagan movement in Judaism called the Kohenet movement. That is, it's a woman-led movement that's basically like reconstruction to Israelite paganism. So have a ball and a biscuit. Y'all have fun with that. I think it's super interesting. Super interesting. Um, are there any other failed messiahs in history that got a large following beside Maimonides? Well, Maimonides wasn't a failed messiah. I think you're thinking of Shabbatai Tzvi. I mean, in my opinion, every messiah is a failed messiah, and lots of them had big followings. I mean, there's still people out in Texas thinking David Koresh is coming back. So yeah, I think there's absolutely lots of folks out there who are. I mean, I think every messiah is a failed messiah, basically. I'm not living in a world. I can't even walk to my local bar without getting mugged. Like I'm not living in the messianic times, so not doing that. I don't think there are any messiahs around yet that I want to believe in. All right. Did God set aside a set of people, Israel, from other nations, and was that for a specific person? No, I think the Israelites decided that God picked them as part of their political agenda. I don't think there's any God picking anybody. And any Israelites or Jews or anyone else who want to believe they're better than anyone else can sit and spin. They can sit and spin. I have no time for ethnic supremacism, uh, white supremacy, Jewish supremacy. None of that. It's just like boring. Racism is boring. If you're going to be evil in a new way. like I just don't want no boring evil. Like be like if you're gonna be evil, be like Lex Luthor evil. Don't be like Varg Vikernes evil. Like boring evil. Like I don't know. Racism is a very boring form of evil. All right. Um, wow, there's so many great things. Yeah, no, Kurt, you're right. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, the Talmud does talk about refusing betrothal, and also women have a lot of ability to divorce. Uh, but there's what the Talmud says, and there's what really happened. I mean, do we really think that in the 6th century women had a lot of agency and all that? No. Um, no. I mean, and then chalitza and all that stuff, like it's a mess. That stuff is super gross. Um, so, but I think in principle, it wasn't. I don't think it was very good for women. I think it was very good for men either, really, unless you were like pretty high up on the social ladder. All right, you guys have such amazing questions. My God. Um, you have this anonymous, double anonymous. Interested in learning more about the temple ritual in the Jerusalem temple. Yeah, the Talmud has tons about the rituals in the temple. Tons and tons and tons and tons. If you want to go to Tractate Yoma, and the Talmud and the Mishnah has, at least for Yom Kippur, has the entire day mapped out. In fact, I've done a whole episode about it, so you can check out my episode about about at least Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur is the most complicated day. The day in day out of the temple is not that complicated. Shabbat is a little more complicated, but Yom Kippur is the most complicated. And if you understand Yom Kippur in the temple, then everything else is like Fisher Price. So everything else is like Fisher Price. All right, you guys are amazing. Just like again, the other thing about like hanging out with y'all, it's just like you guys are so damn smart. Like you guys are just absolutely like freaking geniuses. And so just like it's humbling for me because I'm like I can't answer these questions. You guys know all kinds of stuff. So it's really just fantastic to see like how smart you guys are and just how challenging your questions are. I'm super impressed by that stuff. Russell, my friend Russell, I'm gonna answer his question because he's man. Oh man, Russell, man, we've been through thick and thin together, brother. Miss you, man. I really do miss you. I really wish we can hang out some more sometime soon. Yeah, I would absolutely be interested in exploring esotericism in video games, and I'm actually in a conversation with another scholar of anime, Russell. So Russell introduced me to anime. I remember like Russell was getting anime back in like the 90s when it was like you still had to get it from like mail order from like crazy Japan stuff. Um, Macross Plus and all this amazing cool anime from back in the day. And so I think before I'll get to the video games one, I'm going to be doing one on esotericism in anime. So looking at Full Metal Alchemist and Genshin and some other animes that focus on the Lesser Key of Solomon and Goetia stuff and alchemy. So we're going to be teaming up at some point, probably in the summer or the fall, to do esotericism and anime, which is kind of cool because it's like Western esotericism mixes in with Japan stuff. But the video game stuff, I just got to find someone who knows a lot more about video games than I do. But yeah, esotericism is absolutely just in gaming in general, whether it's tabletop gaming like D&D or video games, it's everywhere. And so I would just need someone who knows a lot more about video games to do that. And that's a super cool topic, and I'd love to do it. But I think even before that's going to happen, I'm going to be doing one on esotericism, Western esotericism, as it shows up in anime, which I think is really, really cool. So, um, so yeah, that's really cool. More happens. All right. I also made some sake recently. I'm going to be having that for dinner. I have some Thai waiting on me, so I'm going to crack open some sake. Sake takes 88 days to make, folks. 88 days to make. So I'm all about making sake, and I have a couple of sake, a couple bottles of sake, not a couple, 10 bottles of sake. Um, but I'm looking forward to cracking open some sake later and trying that. Um, all right, let me scroll up and get a couple more questions. I might go till 6:15 or something like that. Um, um, oh yeah, Guts at Gibbon. Oh yeah, Guts at Gibbon is getting started. Oh, all right, that's getting started. I may have to join that later. Let's see here. What is your favorite post Althusserian? Um, this is a super technical question, isn't it? Um, I don't like a lot of the post-Althusserians because I think what they ended up doing was abandoning structural Marxism. I'm kind of an orthodox Althusserian. I really like structural Marxism. So I'm not a big fan of any of the posties because I think they abandoned the structuralist camp. I think postmodernism and post-structuralism overcame them, and so I'm really a hardcore structuralist when it comes to that. So I don't like any of the posties. So I'm much more on the old school camp of pretty significant, uh, pretty significant um, structuralism in that way. Um, is telos a meaningful phrase in a world where time is simply a physical coordinate position in the superset? Um, y- yeah, I think that one can talk about what I would call local teloi. So I think that one can talk about historical determinism without it being a Hegelian historical teleology, where there's an absolute governing everything. That's certainly not the case. Um, and I think that one can talk about it without simply saying the Foucauldian history has no meaning. We can have no grand narratives. That's bullshit. Um, what we can talk about is that civilization of any kind has structural components that make it possible. There are conditions for the possibility of any civilization reproducing itself. And that comes down to a thing as simple as like calories. And so, insofar as any civilization wants to reproduce itself, it has to do that in terms of calories, mimetic structures, religious structures, mining, producing energy, whatever, consuming energy. And that doesn't mean that when you can one can dedicate oneself to a local determinism, what I would call a high resolution determinism, and that doesn't mean that is a long arc, a metaphysical long arc, or even a material long arc. So I'm not committed to the idea that teleology should be abandoned. I don't think that's the case. I think that ultimate teleology, absolute teleology, Hegelian teleology, that's not going to work. But a low resolution, or rather a high resolution teleology, I think that has to be true because otherwise, no civilization. Otherwise, we couldn't understand why any civilization reproduces itself, and clearly we can do that. We have anthropology, sociology, etc., political economy. Um, so yeah, I'm totally about a really high resolution analysis. Now, of course, the problem with the high resolution analysis, right, is that it narrows the historical window and it gives you very little predictive power. And I think that's where I get off the train with a lot of old school Marxism is that just because you commit yourself to a historical materialism does not mean you get predictive power. In fact, I think historical materialism bars the gate to historical predictive power. And I think that Marx himself proved that by being wrong about every single thing he predicted. Um, so again, like he was wrong about every prediction. And so that's to me shows me that he had just got historical materialism wrong, which is also why I'm not committed to being some Marxianity. You can miss me with that. I'm not interested in that at all. Um, but so I think, but the method is still good. Um, but most people are not good at wielding it. Most people are not good at wielding it. Um, all right, I'm going to do just a few more minutes, and I'm going to jump over to the guts at Gibbon thing. Um, let's see here. Do I actually believe in the efficacy of magic? Sure, I believe in the psychological efficacy of magic. I don't believe in the causal relationship of magic. Is there a connection between quantum mechanics and mysticism? No, no. There's nothing about quantum mechanics that gives any good. There's nothing about quantum mechanics that gives any credence uh, to any mystical belief. It's not even clear. We don't even have a good metaphysics for quantum mechanics yet. Like we don't have a good metaphysics for it yet. That shows you how bad things are actually. So yeah, I'm not I'm not I think we're still working out the metaphysics of quantum mechanics. There's some good books about that, but we haven't worked out the metaphysics of that stuff yet. Um, from Derrida to Lewis to Foucault to Baudrillard, Pomo can be tough to nail down. Look, I don't think any of those guys are postmodern. Actually, I think those are post-structuralist. Postmodernism is a literary movement. Post-structuralism is a philosophical movement. Any aspects of it that stick out as bad philosophy in your mind? Almost all of it. um, I don't like Derrida. he's fun to read, but I think he's just clever, and I don't like clever. I think Deleuze's metaphysics are really compelling and really interesting. Uh, and I'm talking about difference of repetition, not a thousand plateaus. God, if I never have to hear another person talk about a thousand plateaus the rest of my life, I will be happy. I think that a thousand plateaus is a terrible book. Terrible book. Um, it's just awful. Um, difference of repetition is the work of profound genius. Profound genius. I think there's something really important about what Deleuze is doing in difference of repetition. I don't like Foucault at all. I've never understood why anyone would get with Foucault. Not even Foucault got with Foucault. The early Foucault of the 50s is unrecognizable by the Foucault of the 80s. I don't understand why anyone is seduced by that stuff. Um, it's relatively innocuous ideas dressed up in super complicated language, like schools indoctrinate kids. Hmm. Yeah. Like, yeah. Mental asylums regulate social definitions of sanity. I mean, are we? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, Discipline and Punch is pretty good. Sister Sexuality is pretty good, but and Baudrillard's just a mess. I don't have any. I just, yeah. I mean, I'd rather deal with Guy Debord. I like Guy Debord. I think he has some important things to say, but I think a lot of it's bad philosophy. And the reason why I say it's bad philosophy is because it's not rigorously argued. Philosophy lives and dies on the hill of argumentation. And it doesn't live and die on the hill of being clever. It doesn't live and die on the hill of like making up crazy words from Greek. It doesn't live and die on being pomo and fashionable. It lives and dies on the hill of making clear, rational arguments. And if you don't do that, then you're not doing philosophy. You're doing creative writing. You're writing prose poetry. And Baudrillard and those guys, it's indulgent and it's decadent. And I think that it was regressive in the history of philosophy. Now, that's not to say they're not geniuses, and then that's not there's not something to learn from them. There is. It's just these graduate students being fed a line about how important these guys are, these French post-structuralists. It's a line, and I was fed it in graduate school, and I just like I remember just like looking at it. I was like, I don't think the emperor. It's not the emperor's not wearing any clothes. It's just that they're not that interesting clothes. There's something about them that's important, but it's not that interesting in the end. So I don't know. Um, all right. Um, yeah, yeah, I agree about the Germanic thing too. All right, let me get a couple more questions, and I'm going to go eat dinner. Um, have I heard of Peter Lavanda? Yep, he wrote a series of occult thrillers called The Lovecraft Code. It's not exactly literature. Yeah, I'll check it out. I've heard of him, but I haven't read it. So thank you, Yari, for the super chat. I'll have to check that out. I have not looked at that. Um, all right. Can we get an episode about pharmacopoeia and esoterica? I've kind of done one on Della Porta's Natural Magic, where he talks about some recipes for to go mad for a day, is what he calls it, to go insane for a day. It's like recreational insanity. They're clearly hallucinogenics and deliriants. So I've kind of done an episode about that. So I've kind of done an episode about that. Be interesting. Um, all right, folks. Let's scroll down and make sure there's anything else down here. But um oh, Michael, no, I never heard anything back from Dr. Skinner. No, I wrote him and never heard anything. So I guess he's busy. He's a busy dude. So he's a busy dude. Be cool to work with him, to chat with him, express my gratitude for his work, but never heard back from him. All right, folks. Uh, thoughts on Karl Popper? Just finished my absinthe. Falsification is a good regulative ideal, and it's also a straitjacket that actually prevents science from getting done. period. um, yeah, I think that when we can do falsification, we should, but but when we make all of science straitjacketed into falsification or philosophy or psychology or anything, um, it's it destroys science. It completely shackles science. And so I think falsification is an excellent regulative ideal, and I'm all about it. But I don't think that one, I don't think practically scientists do that. um, and two, I don't think that it should be the end all be all of how we define science. So I'm all about falsification, but to think that that is an exhaustive idea of what science is just completely, it's not true. It's just not true, and it's actually harmful to the business of doing science. Um, so yeah, I'm not a Popperian when it comes to the scientific method, and I think that no one is actually. I don't, aside from like some philosophers of science on the internet, I don't know anyone who's actually a Popperian, and I certainly don't know any scientists who are Popperians. They don't give a damn about that. They don't give a damn about philosophy of science. Um, so um, so there's that. All right. Although I will say that the Sabine Hassendorfer, the great, who I really appreciate, she has a really great understanding of the necessity of science and philosophy being in conversation with each other. So I really do appreciate her take on that relationship. I do appreciate her take on that relationship. Um, all right, folks. I think I'm going to go eat and go watch Gutsick Gibbon take down Robert Suffer. Um, Um, Let me just say, man, I love these hangouts. I love these chats. I love hanging out with you guys. I love chatting with y'all. I love hearing these amazing questions. Um, Thank you so much for the time that you take to hang out with me, the time you take to hang out with Esoterica, to sit with me and as I go through these bizarre topics and things like this. You guys are just really really amazing. I really appreciate uh, I appreciate y'all. I really, really appreciate you guys. You make it fun. You make this worth doing. Um, yeah, you make this worth doing, and you make it just thoughtful and just fun. And you guys are really amazing in that regard. So let me just again say, let me just express my sincere gratitude for the supporters of the channel, for the folks that support me on Patreon, for the live chats, the super chats. You guys make this possible for me to do. Um, and I'm just really grateful and really humbled and really blessed to be able to do the work I do and to have the support from people like you that make that possible. So that in that way, I'm just deeply thankful and deeply grateful for your support. So um so folks, I hope that folks who celebrate Easter had a really good Easter. I hope that folks are continuing to be burdened with the inconvenience that is Passover, endure the inconvenience of Passover with dignity, and folks who are observing Ramadan, who I hope you guys have a meaningful fast and a meaningful Ramadan. Um, and the rest of us, I hope we enjoy spring or autumn if you're in the southern hemisphere, and absolutely looking forward to future esoteric content. Um, some Gnosticism stuff next week. We're going to be taking a look at 3 different Gnostic texts. So that's going to be coming down the pike next week, and lots more content to come. So, folks, again, from me to you, really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for the super chats. Thank you so much for supporting um, my work on Patreon, and making this all possible. I really do appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, I will see you next week, next Friday, for an episode on Gnosticism. We're going to cover 2 Valentinian texts and a Cathar text. So tune back in for more Gnosticism next week. And until then, you guys have a great night. If you're in New York City, maybe I'll see you in the book fair or around there. But other than that, you guys have a great night. and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much. Happy 420 if you're indulging. Go easy on it, and you guys have a great night. Thank you.